when you find yourself constantly apologizing for things that aren't your fault. It's a quiet signal that something deeper is going on inside you. It's not just about saying the words, I'm sorry. It's about the emotional habit that forms when you begin to value the comfort of others more than the truth of your own experience. You begin to say sorry when someone else is late, when someone else is upset, when the weather changes, or when plans fall through you. Apologize before you even speak, as though your existence requires permission and your presence demands an explanation. This is not humility, this is fear disguised as politeness. And the danger of this pattern is that it slowly erodes your sense of self worth because every time you apologize unnecessarily, you send a message to your own mind that you are in the wrong even when you are not. This behavior often starts early. Perhaps you were taught that being nice meant being agreeable at all costs, or that keeping the peace was more important than being honest. Maybe you grew up in a home where you had to walk on eggshells to avoid conflict. Or maybe you learned that love was conditional based on how pleasing you were to others. Adapted, you learned to stay small, to speak gently, to apologize first, to keep the balance in relationships, even if it meant being unfair to yourself over time. This becomes your emotional reflex. You don't think twice about apologizing. You don't question whether you've actually done something wrong. Becomes automatic because deep down you believe that preventing discomfort is your job, and that if someone else is unhappy, it must somehow be your fault. But what this does is it puts the weight of everyone else's emotions on your shoulders. It teaches you to carry blame that doesn't belong to you. And the longer you do this, the harder it becomes to even recognize your own boundaries. You begin to doubt your instincts, to mistrust your feelings, to question your choices because you're so used to deferring to others, apologizing instead of speaking up, smoothing things over, instead of standing your ground. And eventually you find that your voice has grown quiet, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've been saying sorry for so long that you've forgotten how to say anything else. And this isn't just emotionally exhausting, it's dangerous because people begin to treat you the way you treat yourself. If you present yourself as someone who is always at fault, others will begin to expect you to take the blame. If you show up in relationships as someone who never says no, others will stop asking and start assuming. If you constantly apologize for your presence, you will attract who are more than willing to let you carry their burdens too. And slowly you become invisible, not because you lack value, but because you've handed your value over piece by piece in the name of being nice. Reclaiming yourself means recognizing that your worth is not based on how comfortable you make others. It means learning to pause before you say, I'm sorry, and ask yourself, is this truly mine? To own it means understanding that empathy and accountability are not the same thing, and you can be kind without being a doormat. You can be loving without being responsible for everyone's feelings. Show up in this world with compassion and still honor your own boundaries. So the next time you feel that apology rising in your throat when you've done nothing wrong, pause, take a breath, and remind yourself that your existence does not need to shrink for someone else's comfort. Your voice matters, your presence matters, and your truth matters. And when you stop apologizing for being you, you begin to remember who you really are. And that is the first step toward healing from the kind of niceness that hurts more than it helps. When you avoid confrontation at all costs, You may think you are choosing peace, but what you are actually doing is postponing truth. You tell yourself that keeping things calm is more important than being honest, that it is better to swallow your feelings than to risk upsetting someone else. And over time, you begin to wear this avoidance like armor, convince yourself that silence is strength, when really it is a quiet surrender of your power. You stay silent when something bothers you. You pretend it didn't hurt you when it absolutely did, and you tell yourself it's not worth it to speak up because you fear what might follow an argument, disprojection, the possibility that someone might not like you anymore. And so you choose to keep the waters still on the surface, even if a storm is building inside you. The danger of this is that every unspoken truth becomes a wound that festers, every swallowed word becomes a weight you carry, and at time, you avoid a necessary confrontation. You confirm the belief that your feelings don't matter. And as much as someone else's comfort, you begin to teach people that they can speak over you, dismiss your needs, ignore your pain because you won't say anything back. And this doesn't just hurt your relationships, it hurts your self-trust, because deep down, you know when something doesn't feel right. You know when a line has been crossed or a value compromised. But each time you pretend not to notice, you turn away from yourself, and that internal betrayal is more damaging than any external conflict could ever be. Avoiding confrontation may seem like a path to peace, but it often leads to resentment, because you keep giving and giving and giving without ever asking for what you need in return. You smile when you want to cry. You say it's fine when it's not. You let someone walk away without knowing how deeply they hurt you. And that unspoken pain becomes bitterness that settles in your chest like a weight, and one day, you explode, not because of one moment, but because of 100 little moments you never addressed, and suddenly you are the one who seems unreasonable or overly emotional. Where really, you just ran out of space to hold everything inside. Real peace is not found in the absence of conflict, it is found in the presence of truth. And true connection is only possible when both people feel safe enough to be honest. Even when that honesty is uncomfortable, you deserve to be. Relationships where you can say, "This hurt me, this made me feel unseen, this is what I need," and still be held with respect and love. And if that kind of conversation is not welcomed, then the relationship itself needs to be re-examined. Because your voice is not too much, your feelings are not a burden, and your truth is not a threat. It is a bridge to deeper connection. When spoken with courage and care, learning to face confrontation with grace is a powerful form of growth. It means choosing discomfort now to avoid resentment later. It means honoring your own boundaries even when your voice shakes. It means trusting that you can survive disagreement, that you can handle someone else's disappointment, that you can hold your ground without losing your compassion. And it means letting go of the belief that being liked is more important than being real, because when you start showing up as yourself with honesty and integrity, you begin to attract relationships that can hold the weight of who you truly are. So if you have been avoiding confrontation, take this as your permission to begin speaking your truth, not with anger, not with blame, but with clarity and courage, because your peace should not come at the cost of your authenticity, and your silence should not be the price you pay to keep the people around you comfortable. Speak up not to create conflict, but to create connection. Speak up because you matter, and your truth deserves to be heard. When you say yes, Even though your soul is screaming, no, you are not being kind. You are abandoning yourself in the name of being liked. You tell yourself that it's easier to agree that it's just one more favor, that it's not worth the discomfort of saying no. But with every yes that goes against your own needs, your own truth, your own boundary, you are silently erasing parts of yourself. You are sending a message to your own heart that its voice doesn't matter as much as the expectations of others. And this message begins to echo through your choices, your energy, and eventually your identity. It starts small. Maybe you agree to help someone, even though you're exhausted. Maybe you agree to plans that drain you. Maybe you say yes to a commitment you have no time for, or to a relationship that no longer feels right. And in the moment, you convince yourself that you are doing the right thing, that being selfless is noble, that your discomfort is a price you're willing to pay for harmony. But deep down, something begins to shift. You start feeling resentful. You start feeling invisible. You start wondering why no one sees your needs. And the answer is simple. It's because you keep hiding them behind yes. The danger of always saying yes is that it disconnects you from your own truth. The more you ignore your inner no, the harder it becomes to hear it clearly. You begin to second guess your instincts. You hesitate before making choices. You lose confidence in your ability to decide what's right for you. And this confusion creates emotional fatigue. It makes you feel lost, anxious, and overwhelmed because you're living out someone else's version of your life rather than your own. And eventually, you begin to feel like a stranger to yourself, smiling on the outside while feeling unseen and unheard on the inside. Saying yes when your soul says no, not generosity. It is self-abandonment, and no amount of people-pleasing will fill the emptiness that comes from neglecting your own voice. Because deep down you know you are betraying yourself, and that kind of betrayal cuts deeper than any rejection ever could. It leads to burnout. It leads to emotional exhaustion. It leads to relationships where your needs are never met because you never expressed them in the first place. And when you reach that point of emotional depletion, it becomes harder and harder to find your way back to yourself. But the truth is, you don't have to live that way. Can begin right now to honor your no without guilt, without apology, and without fear of rejection. Because saying no is not unkind. It is one of the most powerful ways to say yes to yourself. It is how you reclaim your energy, your time, and your truth. It is how you create space in your life for the things that truly matter, the people who truly care, and the purpose that truly lights you up. Learning to say no takes practice. It takes courage, especially when you've spent your life being the one who always says yes. But every time you choose to listen to your inner voice, instead of silencing for the sake of others, you grow stronger. You begin to trust yourself more deeply, and you begin to show up in the world, not as a version of yourself designed to please everyone, but as your real authentic self. And that is where true connection begins. So the next time you feel that tension in your chest, the next time your body tightens and your heart whispers, no, pause, breathe, and remember that you have a choice. You do not owe anyone your yes, especially if it costs you your peace, your joy, or your integrity. Your no is not rejection, it is protection. And the more you honor it, the more you will feel at home in your own life, your own skin, and your own soul. When you find yourself constantly over-explaining everything you do, every decision you make, every feeling you feel, it is often because deep down you are afraid of being misunderstood, or judged, or rejected, and so you try to compensate by giving people every detail, every reason, every justification, in hopes that if they understand enough, they will not criticize you, they will not walk away, they will not think less of you. But the truth is that over-explaining is not clarity, it is self-doubt, dressed up as communication. It is a survival response born from a place where you once felt that your truth alone was not enough to be accepted or safe. Maybe you grew up in an environment where your words were questioned, where your feelings were invalidated, where your choices were never quite right, and so you learned to defend yourself, advance to anticipate every possible misunderstanding, and to try to control how others perceive you. But in doing that, you also gave away your power, because every time you feel the need to explain yourself more than necessary, you are assuming that the other person's opinion of you matters more than your own. You are placing their approval above your peace, and that is a dangerous pattern to live in. Over time, this habit becomes exhausting because you are not just living your life, you are constantly narrating it for the benefit of others. You begin to second guess yourself. Before you speak, calculate how your words might be taken, to adjust your tone and your truth, to make sure no one gets upset. And in that process, you lose the core of what you were trying to say in the first place. Your voice becomes diluted, not because you lack clarity, but because you have learned to believe that your natural expression is not valid unless it is explained and softened and proven. The danger of over-explaining is not just in the energy it drains, but in the message it sends about your worth. It says, I am not enough as I am. It says, I do not trust you to receive me without proof. It says, I need you to agree with me in order to feel okay about my own choices. And when you live this way, your sense of self becomes tethered to the reactions of others, instead of grounded in your own truth. And that is a shaky place to build a life from, because people are inconsistent. Their moods change, their opinions shift, their understanding is limited, and you will never find stable validation in something so unstable. Healing from the need to over-explain begins when you remind yourself that your choices are valid even if someone else does not understand them, that your boundaries are necessary even if someone does not agree with them, that your feelings are real even if someone else would not feel the same way in your situation. You are allowed to simply say no without writing an essay. You are allowed to leave a conversation without detailing every emotion behind it. You are allowed to speak your truth clearly and directly without performing a monologue of justification. And you are allowed to trust that those who are meant for you will not need constant convincing to believe in your heart. Practice speaking your truth in fewer words, and sit with the discomfort that follows, not because you're cold or unkind, but because you are learning to be anchored in your own validation, rather than endlessly seeking it from others. Remember that silence can be powerful, that confidence is not loud, and that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is say exactly what you mean, and let it land where may not everyone will understand you. And that's okay, because you were not born to be understood by everyone. You were born to live in alignment with your soul, and the more you do that, the less you will feel the urge to over-explain who you are. When you are too nice for too long, you start attracting people who take advantage of your kindness, not because you are weak, but because you have not shown them where your limits are. There is a difference between being kind and being available for misuse. Kindness is a virtue, but when it comes without boundaries, it becomes a magnet for those who are looking to take and take without ever thinking to give back. And at first it may feel good to be needed, to be the one everyone turns to be the helper, the fixer, the always reliable friend. But over time, it stops feeling good and starts feeling heavy, because what started as giving from a full heart becomes giving from an empty one. You begin to notice that the people around you show up only when they need something, that your phone rings when there is a problem, not when there is joy to share, that your kindness is met, not with appreciation, but with expectation. And still, you tell yourself, this is who I am. I'm just a nice person. This is what I do. But deep down, you start to feel tired, unappreciated, invisible. You wonder why no one sees. When you're struggling, why no one offers you the same support you give so freely. And it's because you taught them that you don't need it, that you're always okay, that your needs are secondary to theirs. You may believe that being needed means being loved, but those two things are not the same. People can need you without ever loving you. People can use you up and still not see your heart. People can benefit from your presence and never ask about your well-being, and when that becomes your reality, it's not a reflection of them alone. It's a reflection of the space you've allowed in their lives, the access you've granted without limits, and the expectations you've let them form by always saying yes, always smiling, always showing up, even when it costs you your peace. The truth is, you teach people how to treat you, not by your words, but by what you allow. And when you never set boundaries, never say no, never ask for what you need, you end up surrounded by people who think you don't have any needs, or worse, people who know you do, but also know you won't speak up for them, and so they continue to take because it's easier than giving, and you continue to give because it feels safer than confronting, and together you stay stuck in a pattern where your kindness is no longer a gift, but a burden you carry in silence. To break this pattern, you must understand that your kindness is not a contract for mistreatment. Your giving spirit does not owe anyone endless emotional labor. Your heart is not a tool for others to use to feel better about themselves. Your value does not lie in how much you can endure or how much you can do for others. Your value is inherent, and it deserves to be protected, not proven. You can still be kind and say no. You can still be helpful and have limits. You can still love deeply and not allow yourself to be drained. Start by observing who claps for you when you are not in service to them, who celebrates you when you're not useful to them, who listens when you speak about your needs, and who disappears when you're no longer available for their emotional unloading. The ones who respect your boundaries are the ones who truly see you. The ones who pull away when you enforce them were never really there for you to begin with, and though that truth may sting, it is the beginning of freedom, the beginning of reclaiming your time, your energy, your worth. Your kindness is not the problem. The problem is thinking that being kind means being endlessly available and agreeable. You are allowed to protect your energy, allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to stop pouring into people who have no intention of ever pouring back into you. And when you begin to live with that truth, the ones who truly value you will rise. The ones who only used you will fall away, and you will find peace, not in being needed, but in being respected. When you are constantly feeling drained after spending time with people, it is not always because you are an introvert or because you are too sensitive. Sometimes it is because you are giving away your energy without any protection, without any boundaries, and without any awareness how much you are actually offering to others. You listen to everyone's problems. You carry their emotions. You become the emotional dumping ground for people who do not know how to hold space for themselves. And over time, you begin to feel like you are walking through the world with no armor, no boundary between their chaos and your peace. And the result is exhaustion, not just physical tiredness, but emotional depletion, a kind of fatigue that no amount of sleep or alone time can fix, because it is not rest that you need, it is protection. There is a quiet danger in being too emotional available, in being the one who always listens, always comforts, always gives advice, always shows up with understanding and compassion, even when you are running on empty. You believe that this is who you are, that your ability to hold others is a gift, and it is, but when that gift is used without limits, it becomes a burden, and eventually you begin to feel resentment. Even if you don't want to admit it, you feel invisible when others talk over you, unappreciated when they only call you when they are struggling, and unseen when you are the one in pain, but no one notices. You might even start to think that something is wrong with you, that you are too emotional, too sensitive, too fragile, but what's really happening is that you are too open, too unguarded, too willing to give your inner peace away in the name of being liked, or being needed, or being the good friend, the reliable partner, the support sibling. And the more you do this, the more people start to expect it from you, without ever thinking to ask if you are okay. They assume you will always be there, because you always have been. They assume you are strong enough to carry it all because you always have. But strength is not about carrying everything alone. Strength is about knowing when to set it down. If your relationships leave you more tired than fulfilled, if your conversations drain you more than they uplift you, if your kindness always costs you your peace, it is not because you are too nice. It is because you have forgotten. Protect yourself. It is because you have forgotten that you deserve to be poured into. As much as you pour out, you deserve to be supported. As much as you support, and you deserve relationships where you feel energized, not exhausted, seen, not used, held, not drained. Learning to protect your energy means learning to say no without guilt, to excuse yourself from conversations that feel heavy without explanation, to create space between your emotions and someone else's story, to listen without absorbing, to care without carrying, and most importantly, to stop measuring your worth by how much you can endure for others. The truth is, not everyone deserves full access to your heart. Not everyone has earned the right to your emotional labor, and not every problem brought to you is yours to fix. Your empathy is powerful, but it must be managed like any other gift. Otherwise, it becomes the very thing that breaks you down. Over time, you must become intentional about where your energy goes and who gets to share space with you. You must ask yourself after every interaction, how did that make me feel lighter, or heavier, more connected, or more invisible, more like myself, or more like a shell of who I used to be? If the answer leaves you empty too often, it is time to reevaluate not only who you give to, but why. Your peace is sacred, your energy is sacred, your heart is sacred, and it is not a weakness to protect these things. It is wisdom, it is strength, it is self-respect. And when you finally begin to put your energy into yourself, as much as you have poured it into others, you will find that the exhaustion starts to fade, the resentment starts to heal, and your true self begins to rise again, not out of depletion, but from a place of restoration and balance. And that is how you begin to truly thrive. When you're afraid of being seen as mean,
You start to silence your truth, you hold back your opinions, you dilute your boundaries, and you say yes when you want to say no, all because you do not want to risk someone thinking you are rude, or difficult, or unkind, and this fear is rooted not in your character, in the conditioning that taught you that to be liked, you must be agreeable, that to be accepted, you must be soft, even when it costs you your clarity, and that to be kind, you must always put others before yourself. But the truth is, there is a difference between being kind and being afraid of. There is a difference between being respectful and being self-erasing, and there is a very dangerous cost to constantly trying to appear nice at the expense of your own voice. It begins when you start shrinking in conversations, not speaking up when something feels wrong, not correcting someone they overstep, not expressing your needs, because you fear they might think you are demanding or selfish, or too much. And at first it may feel like you are avoiding conflict, like you are creating harmony, but inside you feel the tension growing. You feel the weight of all the things you wish you had said, the moments you let slide, the feelings you dismissed to keep others comfortable, and over time, that weight turns into resentment, and that resentment becomes bitterness, and that bitterness becomes emotional exhaustion. You might tell yourself that this is the price of being kind, that your ability to stay quiet, to be accommodating, to avoid confrontation, is a sign of strength, but it is not strength to abandon yourself. It is not compassion to disappear so others can feel better. It is not love to always put others above your truth. Real kindness is rooted in honesty. It is not about always being pleasant. It is about being real with care and respect and grace. It is about showing up fully, not half-heartedly. And it is about being willing to let some people misunderstand you, if it means staying true to yourself. When you spend your life trying not to be seen as mean, you lose your ability to say what you really mean. And the people around you stop knowing the real you. They only know the version of you that keeps things light, that never says no, that never pushes back, that never asks for more. And that version may be easy to be around, but it is not whole. It is not real. Will never be fully loved because it is only a piece of who you are, not the entire picture, and you deserve to be loved and respected for your full truth, not just your silence. It takes courage to let go of the need to be seen as nice. It takes courage to risk being misunderstood, to speak up even when your voice shakes, to set boundaries, even when it makes others uncomfortable, to say no without explanation, to express your needs without apology, and to stand firm in your truth, even when someone else doesn't like it, because you are not here to manage everyone's perception of you. You are here. Live in alignment with your values, your needs, your vision, and your truth. Being kind is beautiful, but being kind without boundaries is dangerous. It leads you to relationships where your silence is expected, where your giving is taken for granted, and where your presence is only appreciated when it is easy and agreeable, but your value does not depend on how agreeable you are. Your worth does not shrink or grow based on how others perceive your boundaries, and your power does not come from being liked by everyone. It comes from being honest with yourself and with others, even when it is uncomfortable. So if you find yourself afraid to speak up, afraid to say no, afraid to be direct, take that fear as a signal, not to be quieter, but to be braver, because your truth is not mean, your boundaries are not cruel, your honesty is not harsh, And your needs are not a problem. They are your foundation. And you're right. And when you begin to live from that truth, you will find that the people who matter, the people who truly see you and love you, will not only stay, they will rise to meet you, and you will no longer need to hide behind nice.
You will simply be free to be real, and that is freedom worth claiming.